peninsula of Florida. So there's the hurricane warning in effect from Tampa down towards Naples. That is where they expect the hurricane force winds to push that water on land and create that storm surge. But even areas inland like Orlando could be seeing power without power for quite a while as these hurricane winds continue to gust. So we are tracking this out, looking like the impact will start to be felt later this afternoon and start to make landfall Wednesday into Thursday. We'll continue to track it each and every day here on Fox Weather. John?
Steve Bender watching it all for us. Steve, thank you very much.
All right, now let's get to St. Pete, where that city, along with nearby Tampa, could get its first direct hit by a major hurricane in more than 100 years. Next,
I just heard them say, hello, this is Facebook from apartment 812 up here and above Chops, Lobster Bar, downtown Boca Raton. I'm just looking at these radar and the storm is tracking at north about 110 degrees. So, it's north with a little bit of easterly. North 0 degrees is north. At 5 degrees, it's a little tiny bit northeast. So it's tracking at 12 miles an hour, north about 5 degrees. So that would, if you extrapolate that, and unless there's some, Cuba was like a speed bump. And when it went across the island, it basically straightened it up to a more northerly, because it was going northwest. And when it hit Cuba, it flipped it to north. So now it's a little bit east of north as it's traveling. And so if I was in Sarasota, Fort Myers, I'd be concerned, because it looks like it's now if it hits just south of Tampa Bay, which if you look at the cone of the cone of certainty, because somewhere in that cone it's going to hit. I don't know why they call it uncertainty, because it's the cone of certainty, and somewhere in that cone it should hit, unless something really strange happens, which can happen with weather. But all things being equal, and the radar paths have been, over recent weather systems has been really good. It's been spot on. Well, spot on means it's going to hit slightly south of Tampa, which means Tampa Bay is going to empty out. Because, on the north side of the storm, as it comes into the coast of Florida, you're on the soft side of the storm, and the winds are going to blow the water out of Tampa Bay. So you have basically negative surge on the anybody that is south of the eye when the eye crosses the state of Florida. So if you're south of Tampa, let's assume that Tampa is or south of Tampa is the hit spot, the landfall, then now you're on the strong side of the storm, and the wind is going to be pushing the water up and creating this surge of up to 10 feet. And if the storm continues to intensify, which it should, because the water temperatures between Cuba and Florida going towards the Key West and so forth, it's really hot. So they take the barometric pressure when they fly through the eye. Now, so what's with the barometric? So who cares? Well, if the pressure is dropping, that's like a vacuum. Your vacuum cleaner has something spinning, like a hurricane in there with a motor attached to it, a device that spins, and that creates a low pressure, which is how a vacuum works. Well, so this is like a huge vacuum that's facing straight down, and if the pressure is lower than in the outside of the hurricane, the outside edges of the hurricane, then the water is going to, when it comes up to the inside of the hurricane, the water is going to come up. And that's part of the surge at the eye. Now, there's another kind of a surge. As the wind strikes, comes towards, it's pushing, the Gulf of Mexico into, the inland areas. And that's part of that surge of water that's going to end up, in Florida. So you got, anyway, so it's like 945 millibars, which is, concurrent with 127 mile an hour wind, at the eye wall. If I remember, Andrew was like 907 millibars, which is a really low pressure, and the storm was huge. It had a 30-mile eye, 30 mile wide. It was a very compact, small storm with a big eye. It was almost like a big tornado, but it was a hurricane. And that played havoc for Homestead. Now you had Homestead Air Force Base down there, which was affected. But an Air Force Base, they got all the modern stuff to make sure things don't blow away. Now there was a radar installation on top of one of the buildings, the 10-story buildings in Coral Gables, and it supposedly had a 250 mile an hour wind resistance, and that whole radar thing was in the parking lot. It blew off the building, the whole thing. It's a big radar thing. I mean, it was probably 15 feet in diameter and 10 feet tall. It was a big radar unit with a cover that would tend to protect it from wind, and it was supposed to be able to withstand that kind of pressure. And it blew the whole thing off the top of the building. Anyway, so this storm is not to be fooled with. When they say that it was 100 years ago, it really was 100 years ago. I mean, today is the 27th, right? Yep. And you can see an article by my finger right there. I can't seem to get this screen up on my Facebook thing here. I don't understand why that. What is this? Yeah, so I was supposed to be able to see that. That's unlocked. That's unlocked. Anyway, here's an article. I can't show you. It's like stuck on a. But the date of the article, which you can see. Let me just turn this up a little bit brighter. There we go. October 26th, 1921. What is this? October 27th. So it'll be 100 years and 2 days. Because this storm hasn't hit Tampa yet. It's 2 or 3 days away. So it says property damage may hit $5 million, and 2 men are supposedly dead in the Tampa Bay area. Communications was completely cut off. So I've done a little research on this. So there's the newspaper. This is the St. Pete Times. Wednesday morning, October 26th. What is this? This is the 27th. So it was 100 years ago and 2 days. Or 1 day. There's a picture of. Let's see if I can get this out of the way. There we go. Let's just do this. Now you can see. All this debris, wood. Now these are the computer models. The blue lines is the European, the UK lines, UK 1 and UK 2. And it's coming in right at Sarasota. And the rest of these are up here, below Tampa. And, there's Clearwater, Tampa. So, all the computer modeling has it coming in right below Tampa. But, Tampa's a major market, and there are some low areas. So I guess the media is, FEMA and the U.S. government is, the nanny state. Well, we better, even though it's going to hit a little bit below, we better tell everybody it's Tampa so that they'll make preparation. They treat us like we're stupid. Anyway, here's the path of the hurricane that hit 100 years ago, literally 100 years ago. And you can see it's slightly below Tampa because Tampa's up, in the top tip of that bay area. So it came almost the same, except it didn't cross Cuba. It went between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula and came right around with a Cat 3 storm. It was close. And it was a Cat 3 storm just before it hit landfall. There's a big vessel, boat that washed up because of the storm surge. The whole boat was floated up onto land. So we can't really see how. I guess this man is near the edge of the water, but the whole boat is up here. Yeah, that's going to be quite a mess on getting that boat back in the water. If they just yank it, they may damage the bottom. So that took some engineering talent to figure out how to get that washed up vessel back in the water. There's train track that's pretty much decimated by the water, and people standing around looking at it. Back in 1920, 1921 or 2, you know, they had to put their cameras on tripods because the shutter speed of these big box cameras was pretty slow. So here's another one of the, here's the more of the computer modeling. You can see it's a little bit of a spaghetti ball. I'm trying to figure out where the heck it's going to land. But it's, you know, down here you're getting into Fort Myers, Sarasota, and up here, you know, Estero Beach and all that. And this is, only this one really is striking at Tampa. Everything else is below Tampa. So I don't get why everyone's talking about Tampa, but that's why I'm talking. This is at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you can see it's a defined eye. And I watched the radar tracks as, you know, this crossed landfall in Cuba at around 5 a.m. Unfortunately, I happened to be awake at that time, sitting here at this very place, not talking on a microphone. And as the storm came up to Cuba, the eye became perfectly formed. Whereas, you know, 50 miles south of Cuba, the eye was not perfectly formed. But this infrared shows, you know, a pretty well-formed eye. And when it came up, it like jolted over a little tiny bit, you know, like 5 miles east. So Cuba was basically a speed bump. So, you know, here's the edge of Florida right here. Here's Lake Okeechobee. Oh, let me bring that over. So that's Lake Okeechobee. So we're, Jimmy and Marilyn are right about here. Marilyn's sister is right here in Fort Myers. And if I was them, I would find a place to live, to, you know, take the both of you and your dog and go somewhere inland. You know, visit a friend that's inland. You know, in high ground. You know, we lived in Carrollwood Village, which is 10 miles, you know, due north of the Tampa airport. But I remember looking at my, you know, we lived there for 10 years, so I happened to look at the survey that was attached to an appraisal report when we bought the house in Carrollwood Village. And 5002 Barrel Place was the address. And the elevation is 52 feet. Now that's pretty high, you know, compared, you know, the elevation, I mean, you know, at ground level of the building I live in is 5 feet. Now we are about 100 feet above sea level in this apartment. So we would have to get hit with a tsunami before we see any water coming in our front doors. And these doors are hurricane doors. The building was built about 2004, right? So that's about 17 years ago. 17 years ago. And that was well after Andrew. Which is like 1992, I think. So our building department here had plenty of time to increase the codes to see, there's the perfect eye coming over Cuba. This is an infrared frame. Amazing. Now the eye got a little befuddled when it was going over Cuba, but so here's some more computer models. There we go. This is a program called My like MY My Radar Pro. My Radar Pro. It's an app. It costs like $5 for the year to get these various, not aviation layers, but just short of aviation layers. And if you want the aviation layers, then it costs you another $25, which I didn't get that because I'm not flying. I used to fly 40 years ago, 50 years ago. I almost, was training for a pilot's license. My neighbor in college lived across the hall in the dormitory, and I forget his name, but he got his teaching license, so he could teach. He got his instructor license. Yeah, that's what they call it. He got his instructor's license to teach people to get their pilot's license. So we were just talking. He was talking about it, one night when we were playing pinochle or something, or maybe we had dinner together, in the dormitory, the mess hall there. And he said, "Jimmy, I got my instructor license. I heard you were interested in, flying and so forth." He said, "How about this? I got an airplane over, he named the airport, little private airport. And he says, I got a plane there. I can fly there." He says, "I'll tell you what, we split the fuel and I'll teach you how to fly. We'll go up 3 or 4 times, whatever it takes." And I said, "Okay, so let me just ask you, how much does it cost to fill up the airplane with ran on gasoline?" It's like a Cessna 172, if I had to guess. So he took he took me up 4 or 5 times. It was very entertaining. I'm trying to get these headphones on. these are too. I'm trying to find my other ones. These are too confusing on how to. All right, so we do this and we do that. All right, so now we're good. Dial 1 is there. We go. So now I can hear myself talk into this foam thing. You got to talk right into it. That's just the way it goes. According to the Punkin Wagnall, you got to talk right into the microphone. You don't have to talk into the end. You can kind of talk into the just like this. It's almost like an X-ray, but it doesn't have to point down your throat. So anyway, I learned how to fly, which was which was no big deal, actually. It sounds like it could be a big deal, but it really is not a big deal. And so, according to him, most people are just afraid, to be in the front of the plane and see, out the front windows. Because they're always, typically in an airplane, you're on the side of the plane looking sideways. So it's like a benign way to fly is to watch out the side window. You want to look out the front window. It's like driving a car. You look out the side window, you go right to sleep. But if you're in the front window with your hands on the steering wheel, even in an automobile, that's a much more exciting way to go from A to B. So apparently most people are afraid of the height and the visuals from the front, which to me was not fearful at all. I had no problem with that at all, not for a second. I had more fear from a diving board, from a 10-foot high diving board, than I had from being in the airplane. Now, when you land the airplane, taking off was not a problem because you push forward on the throttles and the engine goes faster. There's a prop plane with the propeller in the front, and so you just throttle up and you have your foot on the brakes, and then you let up on your brakes and push a little further forward on the throttle and let up on your brakes, and the airplane starts to roll forward. And when you get up to about 100 knots, then you pull back on the yoke, and you leave the ground, and that's fun. You leave the ground. It's like an elevator ride. You go up at about 500 feet per minute. You can go, on a Cessna, you can go up about 1,100 or 1,200 feet per minute. That'd be a rather steep angle to be, ascending. Ascend means go up. Descend is go down. Anyway, so you want to ascend. Anyway, now when you're landing the plane, now coming down from 5,000 feet, 4,000 feet, 1,000 feet, which is like the aerial photographs that I see when, with a construction job, helicopters float around 400 or 500 feet above the ground as they take pictures of buildings, that bankers and appraisers, as they construction manage a construction job. But when you see the runway in front of you and you're gliding down, you have to do that in a precise way, because if you come down too fast, you'll miss the runway short. And you could be in like dirt and the plane flips over, and you don't want to be short of the runway. You want to touch the wheels down right on the runway. So you have to get used to, when you're descending, how fast you're coming down in relation to your wheels and the runway. Excuse me. So that takes some practice, So you do it 4 or 5 times and you get the joke. And you can get frisky. You get really good at it, which I thought I got really good at it. So if we were in a heaven forbid, flying in a jet airliner or something, and all of a sudden both pilots were dead from some reason other than gunshot wounds. They had a bad chicken salad and they split the sandwich. And all of a sudden they asked for people to put their hands in the air if they have any idea how to fly. I would definitely volunteer to go up the front and put on the headset and let the tower talk me into a landing. Now, landing one of these huge airlines is it's like flying a house. So it's not the same as flying a Cessna 50 years ago. But you got similar controls. The tower would have to tell you, where the lever is for the flaps, because you got to put the flaps down, which is like things that on the back edge of the wings that create an arch on the wings. It's called flaps. And if you watch a bird fly, the bird puts his flaps down and he basically curves his wings so that it's almost like it catches more air as opposed to having the wings out this way. So a bird will will go like this when it's gonna, come in and land. Well, that's the Wright brothers noticed that. They watched. Actually, they did. They watched birds fly big time, and that's how it helped them to design the wings of their first aircraft. Now, I don't think they had flaps, but they should have. It would have made it a lot easier for them to land. It didn't have an awful and take off, and it didn't have a lot of power. If you saw what that aircraft looked like. But anyway, so taking off and landing, and another thing about flying, which I thought I meant, you see all these radar things like I go on here, is that you have to learn weather. It's part of your flight test. Is you have to understand what weather looks like in front of you, like through the cockpit. Being able to visualize these radar screens, that comes a little bit later with, maybe twin engine. If you get certified for twin engines as opposed to single engine aircraft, as you learn up the line. Anyway, I'm looking at these screens, the radar, as you can tell. The infrareds are really very revealing. See, Florida, see, the edge of Florida is right here. This is the tip of Florida right here. Here's Keys. And this sucker, this file is about a 50 megabyte file. 50 million bytes. So when I expand it and move it around, it has to reload that 50 million bytes file. Anyway, this is a touch screen, so I don't want to touch it. But you can see the white out. Oh, God. All right, I'm going to have to get off this because my daughter is calling. And we'll pick this up a little bit later. Hello?
Hi.
Hold on a minute. Let me finish. We're actually on the air talking on Facebook.